anybody with a clout seem to come out scot-free. But the problem actually happens with the consumer. Ultimately, it's the consumer's data which is lost. Organizations can deal with defamation, they can deal with financial losses, they can deal with any other problem that they face as an organization, but it's the consumer who stands a victim because of all of this. And that is what I want to speak about in my topic about consumer security in digital India. So I saw this other thing online the other day about one quote from Amartya Sen where he was telling, we simply keep ranting about becoming a global superpower without having majority of our population educated. I have a very, very associated view with that. Now, education is not about what we did in school or how we performed in college and what we are doing by profession. But if we have to go to digital India, that's something that we really have to meet up with. And it has to be specific to digital information, handling, procedures, data, everything. So, going right on, I'm a cybersecurity consultant. I work for Crossbow Labs. That's about it, most of the things. And yeah, I didn't want to give any disclaimer. I didn't want to leave me or my organization apart when we say that we are a cybersecurity consulting company. We have to participate in what is going on in the nation. So I don't want to give any disclaimer stating that all these views are mine. These, I think, I represent a set of people who have a similar set of views. Though I'm not going to be pointing fingers at a particular organization or a tool or people or motives, but largely this is what looms in the cybersecurity space, and we have to make sure that we protect it. So these are the points I'm speaking about today, specifically consumer awareness, corporate governance, and we the people. We over here, people who have convened, because it is a cybersecurity summit, and we are going to be speaking about how we need to secure, how we need to participate in this entire security process. It is a continuous thing. I take the analogy of the real world again, which is about diseases and vaccination. It's not that you have taken all the vaccinations on the planet. Are you 100% scot-free from getting any of the diseases? The answer is no. Same thing comes up over here as well. There will be evolving threats. There will be new threats. There will be very noble ways of getting new infections and diseases, and we will still have to strive. That's what mankind has been for so long, and we will continue to do that here as well. So the first thing is online markets in India. There's no question on what you can buy online. You can buy just about anything. You can basically live online. You can buy everything from biogas to biofuel to cow dung cakes to everything apart from the normal things that people buy. Every time a transaction happens online, we tend to release data onto the internet, right? Does it happen a lot? Do you release only payment information, or do you release your own sensitive information? I've been speaking about privacy in some of the past events with ncdrc itself. But it's not just about privacy anymore. There's the entire data structure. Yesterday, one of the honorable justices who had come here was talking about, he gave a very lucid example of how we expose ourselves online. Now, the shopping market in India, it was about 2.3 billion. I remembered, I just created the graph after I took the statistics, and it doesn't represent billion, it shows it as 2e plus 0.9, that's 2, 10 power 10, something like that. It was 2.3 billion just 2 years ago in 2013, and in 2016, it's 8.3 billion. That's the forecast that we have. We are somewhere in between now. We have just crossed the 6.2, 6.3 range now, and it's projected to be about 8.3 billion by the mid of 2016. So that shows how much money is there in the market, how much people are beginning to trust this platform of e-commerce. All of us do want to do that. After a lot of years, we have decided that we have to live very comfortable lives, so we don't have to spend our Sunday buying groceries somewhere. So we choose to buy it online, which is fine. So some of the forecasts, $12 billion sales by 2017. These are all in dollars again. So $12 billion of sales only from mobile devices. 4% of India's GDP by 2020. The golden year, 2020 is our golden year from Wings of Fire, those of you who have read that, right? It's supposed to be India 2020 and Wings of Fire and all of these take us to one particular. That was a very far-sighted man who set the target for all of us, and we should take the ownership of doing something there. I think we are somewhere there. 4% of India's GDP coming out of just online sales is quite a bit of an issue for us. And they have projected that with the current rate where there are only 12% of Indians who are using cards. 12% of people who are digitally enabled. So, one of the first steps that the government took in this perspective is to empower the people. I just said empower. And we have all the services online. You can pay your electricity bills, water bills. All of this you can do only if you first paid your internet bills, right? If you cannot connect anymore, you'll not be able to pay any of these bills. So I have a problem with that. So the most important thing is we have a national infrastructure. Bestcom is Bangalore's electricity supply company. And they have the connectivity which is given to various payment gateways, right? These payment gateways will accept your account number and you'll be able to pay a bill online. So what's happening here is you're opening a part of the grid. You're opening a part of at least one computing system which contains this information onto the internet, onto third parties who can leech on you and facilitate payments. The reason that is done, the reason Bestcom does it, or the reason that the tax authority is going to do it, your income taxes or any of the national authorities are going to do it, is because they want to facilitate people as well. So it becomes the bounden duty that we start securing each of these services. I would rather prefer some form of a private network that's available for us, rather than do the whole thing over the internet, right? Customer information. Most of the questions that we always get is, take Aadhaar or take location or take card numbers. What is the risk? We have had these discussions in the past as well, and a lot of proponents of the theory that if you don't have anything to hide, why are you afraid of sharing it online? That doesn't mean that you can completely revoke privacy from the entire sector, right? There is a lot of data which is at risk if it comes in the hands of the wrong people, which we don't want happening. Who will be affected? It's going to be the entire nation. And can we live with this kind of a mindset or an idea or infrastructure in digital India? I think absolutely not. So we'll move on to this. I'm just setting the stage here. This is again the report card from the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, which says we have 16.61 crore Rupee cards, right? This information is publicly available. They say this is the coverage that they've got so far. 16.61 Rupee cards, and you look at the amounts. I don't know how to articulate that. That's 27,283.06 crores, which is in the pool at this point in time. Everybody is listening to this. Everybody is viewing this. It's not just the good people or the happy people who finally have the ability to be digitally enabled, but all the other antisocial people as well. And they're not just from within the country, they're from across the world. They know that this is the kind of information that is coming out into the market, right? Where is all of these information elements, where are all of these information elements contained? What is the infrastructure that is required to secure this kind of transactions? What, as an organization, or as an individual, or as the governmental body or the regulatory body, what are we supposed to do, right? I'm just making a very small attempt today in trying to understand these three things and put it forth. So the implications is, this was one of the incidents that I had in the last week, about 2 weeks ago. Somebody lost their card, right? And they lost a certain number of money on it. What would you do? I want to post this as a question. What would you do when you lose a card? Sorry? Bank? You'll call the bank, block the card. Okay, but what happens? You lose the card, your money is lost. First step that you would do is you would, of course, block the card. But you need to report this to someone. Who is that going to be? Pardon me? Police? Okay. The bank? Okay. Sorry? Awesome. Cybercrime department. Right? So these are the entities that you'd essentially look at. So everybody first said police. You noted the number of people who said police? Because we all know, okay, if there is something wrong, if there is something stolen, we go to the police. Then the number of people reduced. Certain people thought, okay, fine, I have to go to the bank. Maybe they can help me out. So some people said bank. And then there is a very small set of people who are probably into the business quite a bit, who understand the demographics of this. They know that you have to go to the cybercrime department. How many of us know how to connect with the cybercrime department? Do we know that? Yes or no? We don't, right? Or do we? Some of us do, some of us don't. So whose responsibility is it to create that awareness amongst customers that there is something called the cybercrime department and you can go and complain to them? It's the bank's responsibility, is it? How many of you concur with that? Sorry? The police's responsibility, okay? So it's the law enforcement's responsibility. Is it the entire system? Is it the service provider, like the bank? Or should the cybercrime department go about and start advertising wherever we see that, yeah, if you have any problems, you can come to us? They probably can do that as well. But this is the state of affairs. In a room of so many people, all of us pretty much talented, pretty much educated, and we don't know where exactly or whom we have to contact. There are probably other options as well. Which bank would you go to? Would you go to the bank which gave you the card? Or would you go to the bank from where you lost your card information? Right? So each of these contacts, again, like what Mr. Anand was saying, each one of us should probably train one of us. This is some information that we'll have to start dissipating. This is something, there has to be a redressal. So coming back to the case that we had, it so happened that one fine day the bank credited the amount back into this person's card. They lost about 75,000 rupees something, and the bank credited the amount back into the account with no questions asked. The investigation was taken up by this person himself, who went to the bank and he said, I transacted last, we found out that the transaction was last carried out of one particular ATM with the address. So we go to the bank and we tell them, look, this is the ATM from where the fraud has happened. Give me the CCTV footage. Right? After that, there was no other progress on this entire issue and the money was credited back. We don't know why. Probably the bank did not maintain the footage or did not know what is happening. And all of this is for people who are closely associated with IT. And it is probably in Bangalore or in Chennai or in any of these places where they are well aware of these processes. Now imagine with 21 crore cards and 27,000 odd crores of rupees at stake, how many people will know whom to react, how to react, and where they have to approach to get all of these complaints registered? So that, again, is one of the biggest duties to protect the consumer, where each of these organizations, in my opinion, should put out some of these flyers, should give out the information about how you need to react to an incident. In most cases, when you go and file a case or when you actually look at some legal standing for what you have lost, people losing money out of a card doesn't seem very compelling when compared to actual property loss or damage. That seems like a more heinous crime than losing money on a card, because the mistake always goes back to the consumer. They'll be like, they might have lost cards somewhere else. They might have, transacted on some illegal site. But that's being very, it's not taking responsibility, in my opinion. That's not a very good thing to do when especially you have so many billions and billions of consumers who are looking to use your information. So this is a screenshot which I've taken from Facebook. Okay, so this is about a very talented kid, right? What he has done is an unauthorized transaction. On the top right over here, it says carded, and there's a smiley symbol. There are about 14, 15 people who like it. I am able to see this fraud, right? I am able to see that this is criminal. It's probably not criminal. It is an economic fraud. Now, what do? my biggest predicament is, what do I do? Carded, by the way, means that he has either taken some legitimate car of some other consumer and they have used it and defrauded the consumer, or they have defrauded the payment gateway, or some part of the system has been defrauded, or multiple components of the system has been defrauded, and illicit gains have been obtained. How is this incident supposed to be reported, or do I report it at all? I have a moral dilemma over here, right? I am in the cybersecurity space. I work closely with the enforcement agency. I work closely with the research center, and I know that this is not the correct thing to do. It's typically seeing somebody mug another person while you're on the road, while you take a stroll. So what are you supposed to do over here? Do you report this person? Do you not? Right? We come across some of these points. These are, again, the new kinds of threats which are seeping in into the system at this point in time. When we go towards our motives of digital India, or when we come up with alternate modes of payments, you can make payments out of a mobile, you can make payments out of nothing, for all you know. You just go to the ATM, you enter the PIN, and it gives you the cash. Cardless transactions are possible. So under such circumstances, how do you deal with it? That is one very important pressing issue. And the fact that the person has put it out on a social networking page is even more appalling. That is the biggest problem that I have of all, right? So this is again a news grab. Some guy who defrauded the big mama of e-commerce in India for 20 lakh rupees. You probably might have read it, you know. They bought original goods. He bought original goods and returned fake ones, and then he made some money out of that. But the issue over here is, in any of these frauds, you have various other frauds, right? You have cybercrime, which is up by 48%, and 72% of Indian companies have faced an attack in 2015. That's a survey from KPMG. Then you have so many cybercrimes which have been reported in this particular fiscal year. The biggest problem is when the merchant is selling a lot of goods to you and somebody defrauds them of to a tune of about 20 lakhs or 50 lakhs, it doesn't matter. But for the customer, it does. Every time they lose even 5,000 or 10,000 rupees, or imagine in one of our villages, in one of our urban areas where, or a rural area where people have their entire life savings put on this, when the government is progressing with Digital India so much, and they say, okay, this facilitates me, and hence I have to put all of my money there. It's probably their entire life savings. How would a common farmer know that this is how they have to, this is the information that they have to protect? It opens up so many vulnerabilities, and it's an ultimate playground for a lot of people who want to defraud the entire system. So that calls for consumer awareness, extremely important, from the service provider side. I believe it has to be from the service provider's side. If you are a bank, you have to tell people how and what information they have to secure. That is something that I strongly believe. Corporate responsibility is extremely critical. We are multiple corporates. I'm not just talking about merchants who sell or accept private information, but playing by the rules is very important, because we are a very huge nation. You try to do this in some other part of the world. If I may take the example of a UAE or any of the GCC countries, which is more in control by the way of their administration, not just because of their autocratic rulers or non-democracies existing. Kuwait is a democracy, right? They are still able to efficiently manage the country because of its size and the population and a lot of other controls that they've built in. For us, we have hundreds of verticals going up at the same time, and we have to make sure that this information is somehow not compromised. There has to be, and corporates, I think, can do it. Organizations can do this particular activity. Regulation of information collected is very mandatory, because how much ever a corporate is going to do things, the government, which ultimately works for a lot of good of the people, and its ultimate reasoning, will have to step in and make sure the information collected is regulated. How many of you know both of these logos? How many of you have heard of Microsoft Azure and AWS services? Yeah, IT folk, I know you all know it, yeah. Students, you've done that? Okay. So, I'll take some leads from what Vivek said, you know, $2.4 per server per hour with a lot of computing power. The point with these data centers, you see, there's this map In India, there are 3 locations for Microsoft. Amazon has not got any data center or its cloud base located in the country. How many of you think this is a problem? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Why is this a problem? Sorry? Latency, performance issue. Number of hops, okay, performance issue. But it's a high availability architecture anyway, right? Is that the problem? Confidentiality from what? Pardon me? It's across the country, yeah. So it is in some other country, agreed. So what is the problem? Why is that a problem for people who are hosting data on the AWS? Is that a law? Are you sure? Absolutely. Absolutely. If there is a breach, or if it calls for an investigation from the law enforcement which is present in India, they will not have jurisdiction on the data which is stored in some other parts of the world. This is what the FBI and the American government have been fighting with Microsoft for a number of reasons, right? A lot of people are fighting. This is something that they don't understand. Technology has grown. Now, how do you put our own boundaries onto it? You can't really do that. But is it required or not? I think I'll have to just play the devil's advocate. We can't, I am not a proponent of the theory that it has to be hosted locally, nor am I for at any point in time hosting the data. So, and not, these are challenges that can be solved by whom? Service providers only? Anyone else? Sorry? It has to be shared responsibility between service provider and customer. Does the customer have a say in where the data is hosted? Governments probably, yeah, that's one of the options. So this is what technologists should solve. You have to work, we have to work in tandem, bring about problems like this. We have had cases where these kinds of frauds have happened, and it stands at a point of no resolution because we don't have jurisdiction over some of the other areas where the data is hosted. It could be a financial fraud, it could be a criminal activity, it could be anything, right? So we come to the question of what can we ultimately do because of this. That's where I believe regulations, compliance, and the overall responsibility of any entity comes into the picture. RBI has issued a standard guideline. It's called the RBI Guidelines. Those of you who are in the banking sector will obviously know about this. They regulate a lot of activities which are carried out. They have issued a guideline for e-commerce merchants as well. They have issued guidelines for any entity which is processing a financial transaction, in which they have said that the data should be present where Indian law enforcement has jurisdiction, right? When the RBI or the government or any regulatory body passes a law, it will not be exactly specific to technical details, because they have to address a very large audience. It will not be specific to one particular technology or an environment or an organization. They have to address humongous number of people considering what we have in India, and hence they have made a statement which comes to this. So how many e-commerce service providers do you know who are compliant with these guidelines? You take all the e-commerce merchants, you see where their headquarters is located, you see where the data is located, and then you find out if there is a fraud that has happened on your card. You have left your card probably somewhere, right? It's like telling, you've left the keys on your bike, the bike was stolen, so we can't do anything about it. Can a policeman say that? Will you accept it? Would you? You wouldn't, right? So it's something similar to that. There are frauds happening. Some irresponsibilities lead to data being disclosed, and that is misused, and that needs to be taken care of. Now, we have to make sure as e-commerce merchants or as banks, if you're a bank, if you're a service provider, or if you're a consumer, get back to your merchants and find out if your data is going to be stored securely. Understand some of these guidelines. It's not possible for every common man consumer to know that these are the guidelines and it has to be done this way. So that's why it comes from the government, where they say this is what you have to do. And as an organization, if you are a startup, if you are an e-commerce merchant who's looking to secure your data by the laws of the country, one of the things that you might want to take care of is host the data locally. That is one of the guidelines that you have to abide by. You have various industry best compliance methods. You have PCI, you have ISOs, you have GLBAs, FedRAMs. There is absolutely nothing wrong in deriving some of these security practices from other countries, right? That's somewhere that we can help. Each of you, I'm sure those of you who are in IT are doing some of your reporting and your task management and your code check-in and check-out for a certain reason, because it's a mandate in some of the parent companies who are your customers and your clients. Infrastructure plays a very critical role. We have to build infrastructure which is thought blast. All the folks who spoke yesterday, take any of these guys who are sitting in these tables, they all have been working on this, how to secure your application, how to secure your networks, how to secure your data handling procedures. All of these information that these companies have on offer are something that will have to be taken. Laws and regulations have to modify with national aspirations. That's one of the most important points. I already talked about technical and legal domains working in tandem, because as the technology improves, you have to find out what are the loopholes. The legal system should also cope with it to understand how to deal with such intricacies, and if there are any problems, how to deal with it. That is something which, is there something related to that within the country? Do we have something pertaining to that in the country? Anyone? How technology and legal compliance should work in tandem. Do we have something on that? Yes or no? Or don't know? Do we? Yes? So security in infrastructure, operation, customers' data, and national interests. What we have done is we have created the national cybersecurity policy, which some of the people who had come, all the honorary people who had come yesterday were talking about. In the morning, if you were here, you would have probably noted that. We do have a cybersecurity policy. We will talk about that. So there was the flood situation in Chennai last week. A lot of people lost a lot of things. And there happens to be one good Samaritan who found out a wallet of someone and posted this picture on his Facebook. He took out all his cards, all his identity cards, his driver's license, his voter ID, and he put this picture. It popped up on my wall, and it said, if any of you know this particular person, please let him know that I have his wallet. It has all of these information elements. Now, obviously, I had to mask out all of the card numbers over here, right? This has happened because he has done it in goodwill. He has done it in the hopes that, this can be, that's his way of contributing back to whatever was happening to that particular calamity over there. Under that duress situation, he has actually put this up. If you were a hacker, what you would do is you would note down this card number and you would not do anything at this point in time. If you were a carder, you would not do anything. Now, maybe 4 months down the line or 6 months down the line, you will defraud him. At which point in time, you have no idea why this happened. This has happened because there was no awareness. You can do everything. You can do a fraudulent transaction. You can do an identity theft. And you'll probably do it somewhere a few months down the line when there are no suspicions about the source of the attack, right? So all of this just because the person who put it on Facebook did not know that this is sensitive information. And that probably is because their service providers did not tell them that. So consumer awareness comes from banks, financial institutions, to the merchants. Merchants in turn will give it to their service providers and other organizations and other experts from within the industry, right? And of course, for all of this, they will need technical inputs from technologists, from people who know the technology, and that's probably the set of people who have convened over here. So the next important thing is incident response, how to react to the theft of data, how to react to defamation. One of the most prolific cases in the last year was of Sarabjit Singh and the kind of things that they had posted and talked about him. If there is a defamation of sorts, how do you react to it? Nobody has an idea. The whole of Facebook and all the Twitterati will continue to torture this guy and defame him and completely destroy his entire psyche. And then it turns out that there is a benefit of doubt for whatever it's worth. What information needs to be secured? Again, identifying the data and then knowing what needs to be secured, paramount for all organizations. So you need to know what is sensitive, what is not. So at the national level, there is a policy which is called the National Cybersecurity Policy of 2013. They have made use of these three terms: personal information, financial and banking information, and sovereign data. Sovereign data is a very, very complex term. You will probably want to look into it. It's available for free online. If you want to participate, I would recommend that you take up this particular document and look at what they have to say. Because once the law is made, if you're going to come back and say, this is not correct or that is not correct, we're not going to take that, right? It has 14 objectives, 15 strategies, and some of the points that I've put here. Creating cybersecurity awareness is one of the policies agenda itself. So every organization has to have a certain level of understanding of what cybersecurity is in doing whatever they are. In NCDRC, what is happening is there is a panel of experts. There is constant looping in of people. There are lots of experts out there. There are a lot of people who know how to, who have a lot of time to find out what a system is capable of and how it needs to be defrauded. And those are the kind of people that we're looking for to set up these committees. One of the MOUs that have been signed this morning is for that particular purpose that you're seeing over there about the PES University. So it's important that you participate, and the learning has to be extremely quick. It's only about 3 or 4 years ago that we had specializations and post-graduations in cybersecurity. Until then, you know, it was simply IT, and which is a vast, humongous ocean, and people would not go, they would go through 4 years of college to simply come out and do coding, which is ultimately not, you know, the result of 4 years of education and in engineering. Research centers has been set up in various parts of the country. Summits and awareness drives like this are being done on a continuous basis. So those of you who are interested, please do let us know. We'd love to have you on board and participate with us in setting up. We need people to, we have had a lot of these discussions with Amarji and Nalini and a lot of our colleagues in NCDRC. We are talking about how do we keep this forum, how do you get so many people onto it, how do you inspire them. I think this summit works as one of those means, and if there is anything that you want to know, we could take it up. There's an entire desk, 4 or 5 desks with NCDRC members plated on top. You can come and get to us whenever you want. All right, thank you so much for the opportunity.